Hey everyone, welcome to episode 186 of Dynasty Underdog. I'm your host, Ryan Dawkins, back from vacation, so I might mess up a little bit, but with me tonight, thankfully, Billy Beeman and Jake Abrams. What's up, man? Well, it's not really Jake Abrams, but he's always going to be Jake Abrams to me.
Forever. Don't let the FBI know who I am.
We all need an alias.
Exactly. Yes. Oh man, it's good. It's going to be a good show tonight. We got the prospect profiles going, some targets by team stuff, dynasty trades. We got a lot. Actually, got a pretty full sheet, so it'll be a fun one.
All right, man. We'll hop into it. So, news and nonsense. Obviously, didn't really get mentioned here, but it is Combine weekend coming up, so I'm sure next week we'll have some takes from that, talking about whether or not it matters and how hyped we are about people we might not have been hyped about before. So we'll stay tuned for that one. But right now we have Higgins franchised, 21 million.
Honestly, wait, I feel like that was a little bit rude of me. How was your vacation, bro? I feel like we got to add. Like,
it was good, man. It was good.
You get food poisoning? I know you went in kind of hot there.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
That's good.
Definitely better than last time. Last time I lost like 10% of my body weight like week after. So
brutal.
I gained it all back. No, it was good. The place we stayed at was really nice and new. Hard to keep the kid out of the pool. It was just nice to get away. 77, 78 and sunny. Can't beat it. Come back and it's snowing where I'm at. So what are you going to do?
A lot of drinks. You have a good time out there? Come on.
A lot of drinks.
All right.
I think I had a nap like every day.
Oh, that's the best. That's vacation, man.
I haven't had a nap in like 6 years. So it's like,
that's a vacation as an adult, right? Where you're all I want to do is just sleep. Like it's all good. Everything else is fine. I don't need to really do much.
But yeah, it was good. Happy to be back. So Cabo Wabo. Everybody asked me if I went to Cabo Wabo, and I did not. But
that's not worth it. I went back in the day with my dad. It was the only time I've ever seen him take a shot of tequila, and he, no joke, looked like his head was about to blow off. It turned so red, from like his neck all the way up to his forehead. It was great.
My goodness,
great.
Yeah, I had my fair share of margaritas, that's for sure.
Doing it right.
Good.
All right,
love it.
Back to T. Higgins.
Oh yeah.
So he's franchise tagged. They say there's no talks of a long-term deal yet. Still could be traded. What's your guys' gut feeling with T. Higgins?
I feel like there's been a lot of people talking in certain terms that he's back there because of this. And I don't really think it means that. We've seen plenty of teams tag a guy and trade him, right? And I think that could definitely be what they're doing here. Now, I think that Joe Burrow probably is, is beating the drum to have T. Higgins back, but
sure.
It's going to cost him a lot of money to keep everybody in town. So I don't think it's a sure thing that he's back, but it is a good sign as of right now. Either way, wherever he goes, I think that he's going to be a top option at wide receiver. So I'm excited about T. Higgins no matter where he's at. Unless, I mean, I shouldn't say that. If he ends up on like the Giants, I'm going to be pretty upset. So taking 5 shots immediately at Jake, but I mean, that just would be a pretty tough situation for him. So yeah, I think that there's some spots that would be unfortunate, but for the most part, I'd be pretty excited about it.
Yeah, like New England.
I think better than the Giants, but that's probably some homerism.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
at least we're going to have the option of a top quarterback most likely in this draft. So if we were to add T. Higgins and get a quarterback up at 3, I think that would be a little bit more exciting than whatever you guys got going on over there.
Rumors have it that we're planning on trading up to top 3, so we'll see.
To us, yeah, right? You're going to steal our pick, yeah. That's
this whole thing here between you two up until draft day, this could be just like fun.
It's going to be a bloodbath, honestly.
I mean, personally, I feel great that you guys aren't like, oh, ha, 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 he could go to Dallas. Like, yeah, that'd be great because he has a really good quarterback and a really good team. So,
well, yeah, but
I mean, that's possible.
It's just unrealistic given cap situation.
I don't have to worry about, which is great.
Yeah.
All right. Russell Wilson, he says he wants 2 Super Bowls over the next 2 years. We all do, right?
Yeah, man, he's got high hopes, man. He's dreaming big. But for me, it's more, obviously it's ridiculous, but more to me, it's a sign that he is looking for a starting job, should be starting somewhere, just kind of like we've thought all offseason. We talked about all offseason that he wasn't really the problem in Denver, that he played pretty well. And I think that he would add a lot to a team like Atlanta or any of these kind of teams where they would, I think he would give them a shot at contending.
Yeah.
So it's not unrealistic to think that they could be contending for something where, if he was in the right spot. But for me, it's just kind of gives me encouragement that he is going to be in the position that I've kind of been expecting him to be in. And he's been a pretty cheap option at quarterback. So I like that.
Yeah. How do you see him slotting in maybe in somewhere like Minnesota where, there's a ton of rumors about Cousins leaving?
Yeah. I mean, that's the dream right there, right? I mean, if in a situation with weapons like Addison and Jefferson and Hawkinson and all the sons.
I was just going to say I just realized that they're all son names. Interesting.
I don't know why. I never realized that either. But yeah, I think a situation like that would be incredible for him. And really, like, he needs a good situation at this point to thrive, no doubt. Like, I think, better offensive line, better play from Russell Wilson, better weapons, better play. Like, that's pretty much any quarterback, but definitely at this stage of his career, he's going to do less elevating than in the past. So if he gets into one of those situations, like, all aboard.
All right, next one. Obviously, right now with the combine going on, we have like all 32 NFL teams, and most of the personnel are around. Some teams don't have personnel around for whatever reason, but Chuba Hubbard, they were talking about the head coach there and how he feels about the running backs, and he had mentioned Chuba Hubbard as a feature back, and he mentioned Miles Sanders second. I don't know what I mean. When I listened to it, it didn't seem like he had like a whole ton of confidence in either. He was just mentioning the guys that are on his team. I feel like they're looking for somebody else.
Yeah,
kind of without saying it. I think he was saying it. So, what do you guys take away from it?
Yeah, I think that's the takeaway too. I think he's in a spot to clean house, and he's going to hype up what he believes is probably tier 2, tier 3 guys in his team. So one of them is going to probably still make the squad. You got to keep them happy. You got to keep them thinking that you're investing in them in some way, shape, or form. So that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be a pretty cheap option, running back 43, like 184 range overall at running back. So, I mean, I'm not really into him at all, but yeah, I mean, they'll probably add somebody, but I imagine he'll still get a decent amount of work in 2024. So
it's worth a shot, but
yeah,
it sounds like they don't. I don't think that's the plan, but we'll see.
This seems like one of those teams where if someone like Trey Benson, Blake Corum, Braylon Allen, one of those guys, early second, late second round falls here, like their draft capital potentially in rookie drafts could be shooting up. Like we're talking potentially even maybe late first, where right now we're not really seeing any running backs landing anywhere near the late first. So just something to be mindful of.
I forgot what the coach they brought in, what his name is, but obviously the
Tampa, right?
Videos. Yeah, Tampa. The video's making the rounds about, how he's going to be stubborn in pushing the run game. So you're probably right that they're going to be looking for somebody like an Allen or something like that where they can just feed the ball to. So that's definitely a possibility over there, given kind of the way he wants to play the game.
All right, some more coach speak here. We have Rashad Bateman and Jameson Williams in line for full-time.
Uriah's not buying any of it. He's not buying any of it.
Obviously, I'm going to try to fall for the Bateman thing a little bit, but I know in the back of my mind, I know in my head, if I don't listen to my heart, I know it's bullshit. And Bateman's probably not ever going to be a thing, and that kind of sucks. Jameson Williams also, like, I think the quote was, and I had like talked about it on Twitter or tried to, but I got called names like right away. It must have been a fan. Was like, "You're shit. You don't know anything." I'm like, "Whoa, guy! I was just saying this is not really like a really nice thing that your coach just said about your first round draft pick." But he was saying he was hoping that Jameson Williams could get more reps and become a full-time starter. It's like, man, shouldn't this guy already be a full-time starter if he was any good? Like, they drafted him 2 years ago. I know he had a little bit of injury or whatever, but like, that's not really like glowing review from your coach. So I don't really buy it. Yeah. I'm out on both players.
Yeah, I'm here with Uriah. I think Uriah is playing it smart. Both these guys are probably better to avoid than not. The Jameson Williams stuff, I know that people are going to fall for it. So if you have him, you can definitely sell him off of news like this, I think. And it's probably better to get out now than wait and hope, and live in hopium. I don't really like doing that. The Bateman stuff is like only slightly more intriguing because he's so much cheaper. Like we saw him go for like the 306 or whatever in Dynasty Underdog 3. And like, I'm fine with that. Like a late third or something, go ahead and take your shot. But I do think that the volume here in Baltimore is just going to be too much to overcome for somebody like an ancillary player like a Bateman. I think it's going to just, I think Isaiah Likely is probably more likely, pun intended, to edge out some targets.
Hey, how long you been a dad? Only like 6 months.
it don't take long, bro. 5 months. That's it. Yeah, I think that he's more likely to edge out some targets than Bateman is, honestly. I just think he's kind of the more dynamic player in general. So I don't know how they're going to play it. Bateman's probably going to be on the field, see more targets, but I'm not super confident in either of these guys either.
All right, that's enough.
Same.
All right, so we just wrapped up our 4th listener league startup. I think in pretty good fashion, and as far as time goes, considering we have people from all over the world.
Yeah. What
were some of your guys' takeaways?
I mean, I'll just give you my first one here, which was very like dumpster dive, but I just thought I thought it was interesting that Jake Browning was like pretty much undrafted, like 500. He had an ADP of like 540, which is kind of bonkers to me. Like I feel like he's better than most of the back end quarterbacks that were going in that range. So that was just one thing I think you can take advantage of. He's a guy who could easily, see some starts, but he probably played himself into a backup role that's more of a committee style backup role where he actually has a chance to maybe like play himself into a starting job. So I don't know if it'll actually happen, but free, like, yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Sounds good. Like, I don't know. I think Jake Browning is not really worthy of a conversation, considering that I'm probably the only one who wasn't part of the draft, but yet I was kind of part of the draft. Funny enough, I was interacting with so many people while they were drafting at different stages of the draft, and hopefully helping. I think
you did great, yeah.
But I did want to highlight a couple of things. One, I wanted to shout out one of our Discord members and constantly commenter on our live streams, AJ. It was his first ever startup. I thought he killed it. Honestly, just want to go through his first 6 picks. We had absolutely Mahomes, Laporta, Garrett Wilson, T. Higgins, the 106, and then Baker. Honestly, thought he hit where he needed to hit for the majority of his picks. There were a couple of spots where, things maybe didn't go as planned and he had to keep working around those situations. But I thought overall, very, very productive first draft from someone who's never really messed around in Dynasty before. So just wanted to shout him out. The other couple of things I wanted to talk about were some of the interesting picks. I thought Justin Herbert went pretty high given some of the other startup mocks that I've seen. He finished off at 105, going ahead of Joe Burrow, going ahead of Justin Jefferson. I've really been seeing Herbert hit somewhere around the 112, sometimes even 202 mark, which is pretty crazy to think about that value drop. And I don't know if that's, folks not being afraid of the other Harbaugh news, but
Harbaugh.
One of the Harbaughs, and kind of being stuck in that mindset. What were some of your thoughts about that quarterback merry-go-round in the first round?
I think it kind of all played out almost just kind of like how you would draw it up. Yeah, Herbert 106 before Burrow was a little interesting, I guess. And then Anthony Richardson at 112. That's a lot of confidence in the guy. Like, I don't think he should have gone much later, but I feel like a Kyler Murray, possibly a Trevor Lawrence, might have gone ahead of Anthony Richardson just based on he was really good when healthy, but we don't know exactly what's going on there. So I don't know if I could take that gamble at 112. But yeah, and then Deshaun Watson at 5'9".
That's yeah.
I don't know. I feel like that might be late. I know he's had some difficulties since he's been back, but he's not that old, right? He's not like a Russell Wilson. He's not like Derek Carr type thing. He still got, I don't know. I thought maybe he should have probably went a little bit sooner. So I think there was some value there.
Yeah, I was looking to take him. I think it's the second time that kind of happened to me. I probably would have tried to snag him for the extra value there, even though I had 2 quarterbacks. Honestly, like I'm fine with taking Richardson at 111. I've definitely done it in drafts before, but with Chase being there, it was kind of an easy pick going for just the solid dynasty value, the dynasty asset there, and coming around getting Kyler was perfect for that. But yeah, I mean, the Herbert thing, I have seen some people kind of trying to push back at the Harbaugh effect, but it's just, Harbaugh coupled with Greg Roman. Like, we've actually seen it before and we know exactly what it is. And I don't mean in Baltimore. These guys work together as well back with the 49ers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And yeah, and we saw the same thing there. So Burrow is pretty easily ahead of Justin Herbert for me. I think our rankings reflect the same. I think Justin Jefferson is. Did you mention Justin Jefferson as too early, or were you saying Justin Herbert and I misheard?
No, I was saying Jefferson should have been ahead of Herbert. I even think
Chase
probably should have been
that was
ahead
a little
of
late,
Herbert.
right?
Yeah,
saying that was a little late for them. Yeah. I agree. I was surprised CD Lamb went 110. I mean, that's some confidence.
Yeah, that was the other thing that I wanted to shout out was picking Lamb over Chase was interesting. Obviously, we have them in the same tier, and so it's not really that big of a gap, obviously, in our own value. But just in the community, I would say that there's actually probably a larger gap than what we have, and I thought that was interesting. And seeing the 101 go at 109 was about market. I think market right now is at the 110, so that feels fine. And considering who took them, it made sense given Dylan and Bro collab team over there going that path. The last thing I did want to talk about, because I just thought it was interesting, and Uriah, we can have this conversation here live. I found it interesting that you went for your first actual wide receiver at the 10-10. I understand that you do have some relatively decent draft capital early on, so I'm assuming you'll be taking Malik Neighbors or someone higher up in the draft, Aroma Dunze. I know you're kind of high on him as well. So just kind of want to talk through a little bit of that logic in terms of, longer standing assets that you went running back heavy. Honestly, that's I don't want to skip my point. That's kind of what I was just curious about.
Yeah, so it wasn't really my plan to draft this way, I guess. it just kind of ended up that way. So I know for sure that my first wide receiver was going to be a rookie wide receiver, and I wanted to get one of the top 2 wide receivers that I cared about. That's why I selected 103 when I did. The other rookie pick I took was 106, is because Trey McBride got picked before that, and he was going to be my target with that pick. So knowing how people feel about Bowers, and he seems to be falling right around the 106, I think I have some sort of leverage there that could get me actual players to go forward. And then, after that, I just figured grab some running backs and I'll load up on some youth wide receivers and see what happens. That's just kind of how it ended up being. It wasn't planned at all. I think the wide receivers that I do have are going to be fine as tier 2 wide receivers kind of get me through, but they're not like super old or anything by any chance. But just kind of young wide receiver. Never really had a draft kind of go this way, but that was the deal. That was the deal. Yeah. Hopefully, whoever I select with the 103 will be obviously like a Chase or Justin Jefferson or a CD type of deal that will make me feel good for the next few years.
Nobody asked for my opinion, but I'm going to give it.
We don't care.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm in this draft, so feel free to shit on my picks too. But I'm not trying to even do that. I think that just as a constructive criticism here, looking at the team and kind of how you prioritize that 106 for the tight end.
Yeah,
I probably would have at 8-10 and at the 9-3 done different things there. I don't know exactly what you would have done with Goddard, but just looking at DeAndre Swift, I'd probably rather maybe with your build take a shot at a Keenan Allen or those wide receivers in that range, maybe an Amari Cooper or something like that over DeAndre Swift. I just don't have much faith in Swift going forward. So just with your build, I think that would have like really enhanced it. Cause like, I actually think this is a pretty solid build. Like you have Hurts and Prescott, you have the in conference stack, which is fun. But then you do have like the young players with the draft capital. I love the Jonathan Taylor pick. It's like a pretty solid team, but I would have tried to, I think, in the middle manage the wide receiver situation slightly different. That's just a thought that I had while looking at it. So
I think you're right.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. And I actually wanted to shout out that Jonathan Taylor pick. It's really hard not to take Jonathan Taylor at the 5'3". Like, obviously, even if you didn't want a running back there, it's almost like you have to. It would be a crime not to. And the same thing goes regardless of how you feel about him. But Austin Eckler dropping down to the 13-2 is pretty bonkers to me. Like, that's almost 2 rounds off of consensus ADP right now. We're talking like close to, I think it's 12 spots. Sorry, that's wrong. I think it's close to like 18 spots. And that's pretty nuts. Like, I don't know what the differentiation is between the league and ADP, but, good for you guys for I guess not giving in to the Austin Eckler rejuvenation hype. I don't know.
But I couldn't do it. Yeah.
I just thought that was interesting.
We are not the community.
No. I'm fine not having Eckler on my team. But
I mean, if anything, though, zero running back strategies are a seriously viable option. Getting James Conner and Joe Mixon down in the 11th and 12th round is pretty sharp. Like, if you can do that as your, only, like for us, we're only starting 1 running back, but even if you're starting 2 running back league like that, you can get by with that plus backups and rookies and whatnot. So definitely still a viable strategy while there's that turnover at running back while we're in that transition period, because it's happening. It probably won't fully, I guess, finalize this year, but I think another running back class in 24 might do the trick. But yeah, we're still going through it.
All right. One last thing, the Jalen Wright mention. What's that about?
Oh, Jalen Wright. Yeah. So I'm not hearing anybody talk about this kid, so I want to get out in front of it, like put my stamp on this kid. The only other person I did hear talk about it was Brenden Lejeune, which is not a shocker. Very good at what he does over there with Debbie Dynasty. But Jalen Wright, running back for Tennessee. I mean, I watched his film and I was really impressed. Like, there's definitely some concerns with him. We'll get into his profile eventually, but I wanted to get out in front of it and just give him a shout right now. I think he's a guy who was in our last mock. I think he was at the end of the 3rd round. And I said in that mock, he will be at the end of the 2nd round, if not middle of the 2nd round come April. So that's just what I'm looking at with this kid. And I think he's an electric athlete. So I'm excited to see, what NFL teams are looking at and maybe where he's going to be projected to go in the draft.
I will also say in that same vein, because once that draft pick happened and you shouted that out, I was just like, all right, I'm going to go watch the tape. Incredible. The other dude who I had never heard of before, who went super early in that draft, was Javon Baker. I don't know if you've been able to watch some of his tape.
I haven't. He's the former Alabama guy that went to UCF or something.
Yeah. Definitely someone to keep an eye out on as well. I don't know if he'll need to go as high as he did here, but definitely someone who stands out pretty well on tape. So this is the great thing about doing mocks as well. Some guys are not getting hyped up, and these are the types of dudes that you want to start stashing in your mind when you have a ton of value later on in the late 3rds and in the late 4ths, when we're talking about championship tickets, and then we're also talking about me trying to add on 4ths to just gain future value, because I do think that is easy value that you can add to your team. This is the time.
Yeah, worth mentioning, Jalen Wright is plus 1,100 to run the fastest 40 at the combine.
Yeah, well, then he's fucked.
It's crazy that nobody's talking about him. That's what's crazy to me, because like you watch his tape and he's dominating.
He's one of Fuzu's guys. Fuzu.
Yeah, he me, so.
All right, I'm off.
Yeah, he blocked me on Twitter. I never even reached out to him. I have no idea what his problem.
He had a QJ wide receiver 1 too. So.
Jake, you were too normal for him. All right.
I think tweet. I swear to God, I think I liked a tweet to someone who like replied to him or something that with like a snarky comment, and he just blocked me. Crazy.
Oh
shit.
yeah.
You're too generous of a person.
Like, he's funny. All right. So we have targets by team 2023. What do you got here for us, Billy?
Ton of stuff, man. I don't know. I just wanted to look at the targets by team for 2023 because I do think like from a descriptive standpoint and like a contextual standpoint, there could be some things to glean from it. Like not always things are going to change for sure, but that's kind of part of some of what we're talking about here. So first one I thought was interesting. I have it pulled up right here. The tight ends, I'm sorting them by greatest target share by team. And just going down a couple here to the Cleveland Browns, 5th, 28%. Do we think that that's going to hold, given a lot of that was probably boosted up by having Joe Flacco at the helm? Do we think that when Deshaun Watson comes back, that David Njoku can still maintain the level of production that we saw in 2023?
I think it will change personally. I don't know how great. Like one of the issues that we have right now in the Cleveland offense is they just hired a new offensive coordinator. We really haven't seen Deshaun Watson play for an entire year yet in the team anyway. So there's so much manipulation to what has already occurred. It makes it very challenging for me to have a good understanding of what the landscape looks like. But I can probably assure you that Njoku won't have as productive of a year this upcoming year as he did this past season. And that has a lot to do with Joe Flacco not being the starting quarterback.
Yeah, I think Njoku probably had his best year last year. I still really like the guy. Still somebody I want on my team, but I do believe that his best year probably was last year. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. I wonder if this surprises anybody. 23.4% targets to the tight end position for the Buffalo Bills.
Yes.
Are we too low on Kincaid? Like, I mean, just looking at it, 23.4%, then 15.9 to the running backs. That's probably not going to change much given the quarterback and the scheme. 60.6 to the wide receiver. We know that that's going to shift a little bit given maybe loss in talent. Maybe they add the rookie, but that's not going to go up much, right? So are we a little too low on Kincaid?
Can you actually sort that based off of the week that Dorsey got fired?
Yeah, do you know what week off the top of your head it was?
No, I want to say it was probably like week 10 or week 11, somewhere in that range.
I mean, let's shoot for that. I did this, by the way, and it's not different. I did
Oh,
do
it's
this.
not? Okay.
It's not very different. But look, I mean, 22.4%.
Okay.
And I did it at the beginning, like first 9 weeks, and I remember I did it. Yeah, so it's virtually the same. So regardless, I mean, whether it's Knox on the field or Kincaid, like or both, they're going to utilize them.
Yeah, I probably am too low on Kincaid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
most likely. I mean, just that target percentage itself is not what I would have expected. Definitely higher than I thought.
Okay. I mean, I think we have Kincaid around like tight end 9-ish. I want to go look right now. I want to see where we're at with that. Yeah, we have him at tight end 10. Like he should probably move ahead of Njoku pretty easily. And then what about Kincaid or Pitts?
That's I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm so non-committal when it comes
just
to
like,
these
I don't
one-offs
know, man.
like that, man. I'd probably still go Pitts personally.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's fair. Yeah, I think so too. But so I guess tight end 9 is probably about where he should sit. So that's an interesting one. That's a tough one. It's hard to read that situation, but I think looking at the target share, you kind of question yourself a little bit there. Like, damn, they're throwing a good deal to that position. So yeah, that's interesting. All right, what about the Bears? 23.2%. Cole Kmet, is he underrated at all? Like with Caleb Williams coming in, they're not going to run much of it. I mean, the scheme's going to be different, but I mean, I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, maybe slightly underrated. I don't know who else is he? Who else is on that team at the tight end position? You have Cole Kmet, and you have
Kmet at tight end 18 behind Goddard, Ingram, Ferguson.
Oh yeah, he should probably be ahead of like Ingram. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Should he be ahead of Ingram? Ingram was tight end 2 last year.
I know. Yeah, that's wild. But just the overall number, the 23.2% for the Bears throwing to tight ends just doesn't seem true. You know what I mean?
Well, it's because it was Justin Fields.
Yeah, he was getting the targets. The receptions didn't actually happen.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, and the volume was low anyway, right?
Yeah.
The target share was high, the volume was low. But so that's again like what I mean. My question is like, switch Ingram and who the hell are we talking about right now? Komet. Switch Evan Ingram and Komet in the offense they're in, which is kind of what I think we're getting. Like we're getting a prospect like Trevor Lawrence coming in, right? Most likely to the Bears.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you, this is like a stupid hypothetical, but if you did throw Komet over on the Jacksonville Jaguars last year, do you think he would have had a similar year to Evan Ingram? Is my question.
Yeah, I think so, but that's also because Doug Peterson is, for lack of better words, he has a kink for tight ends, right? Like notoriously known for basically like
he's always had good tight ends.
He's also produced them too. Like I definitely think that Ingram has gotten better as a tight end because he's played under Peterson. The Giants fan base wanted that man out of New York 10 years ago. He's only been in the league for probably like 7 years, but you get the point.
Yeah, this is tough. I don't know. I think Komet is kind of a low-key buy in a way. I wonder if you could get him, not necessarily for one of these other tight ends, but like for something cheaper than he should be. And I'd kind of be into buying that, just given his situation is going to change and should be getting better. Tight end 18 seems palatable for me. So that's just something I was a little interested in, if that target share can hold with the new regime, new quarterback.
Good shout.
Okay. Wide receivers. So I did notice that teams with high percentage of targets funneled to the wide receivers generally have low percentage of targets to the tight end position.
Yeah.
Just in general, I noticed that. So I think it's kind of a product of having a really solid tight end, right? Like that's, the teams who are throwing to the tight ends more than not, they have really good tight ends. So, I mean, it seems intuitive, but it was something that kind of just stuck out that I figured was worth mentioning. San Francisco throwing 54.5% to the wide receiver position, easily the lowest for a team with multiple top fantasy options at the wide receiver position, yet underutilized. Like how do we approach these San Francisco wide receivers going forward? Do we just hope and pray that Ayuk gets out of there? If he's there, is he a little bit too high in the rankings?
I don't think so. I think that
wide receiver 12. Sorry, wide receiver 12 for Brenden Ayuk in our rankings.
Maybe like a couple spots to go, but I think that both those wide receivers, Debo and Ayuk, are valued so high because of the way they produce, and it's all because of the scheme. I think anything that you see that's happening with Shanahan over there, with a guy like Brock Purdy, Kittle, those weapons, like it's unlike pretty much any other team in the NFL. So it's really kind of hard to compare, in my opinion, what they're doing to a typical NFL team, typical NFL offense, because it's just different. It really is just a different scheme, really, altogether. So it's fun to look at, in terms of San Francisco and those two wide receivers, but to try to compare what they would look like on a different team, like I think it would be drastically different. So having Ayuk and Debo in San Francisco probably is what's best for them. If they were on any other team, say they're a free agent or got traded, like I would mark them down quite a bit, because I don't think that Ayuk or Debo are going to be what Ayuk and Debo are in San Francisco anywhere else.
I think we can draw some parallels to Minnesota just in this conversation. Looking at 30% of the targets to the tight end position, looking at 54% of the targets going to the wide receiver position, which is very low. Like if we sort for lowest, they're 7th on the list, and that just gives me some concerns about Jordan Addison, to be honest. Like that's all I think about with this, right? Is especially since we don't know what the quarterback situation is, right? Like if we're going, 30% to the tight end, 50% of the wide receivers, he's got to be extremely efficient to return value. And he's going very high, up with, the Zay Flowers, those kind of players who are going to be, I think, more full-time players and definitely the wide receiver one on their team. So just something that, in looking at this, I was a little concerned about with the Vikings there.
Yeah, that's fair. Can I just shout out one additional team just because
Yeah,
I think we like the prospect, but I think given the situation and what was going on last year, which by all means half the season was under Josh McDaniels, the Las Vegas Raiders at 13.5% target share to tight ends puts Michael Mayer in a weird predicament. I don't remember who they ended up hiring to be their OC, but it does make a situation to be something that you might want to be paying more attention to this upcoming season just to see how that changes.
Yeah. 67% to the wide receiver position, and I'm pretty sure 60% of that went to Devonta Adams.
Yeah, I think he got like 190 targets or something ridiculous like that.
Do you guys remember Hunter Renfrow?
No, he doesn't remember himself at this point, unfortunately.
Who?
But no, good shout out because that tight end target share will likely be higher next year.
Has to
That's
yeah.
If it isn't, then
there's a problem. We have a problem.
Yeah, that's
Houston.
good. Good eye. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna hit the running back position real quick here. Just a couple notes. The Broncos 31.5% of targets to the running back position, which I thought was kind of interesting, given the emergence of Jaleel McLaughlin.
Yes,
if I get his name right. Where are they? The Broncos? The Broncos. They were the highest. Sorry. Jesus.
They're up there.
I'm looking for them.
I'm
like, they are the highest one. 31.5% highest target share to the running back, which is pretty incredible. Obviously, Javonte Williams could be a beneficiary of some of this heading into his second year off of that injury. But I think what we saw from McLaughlin last year, he's going to get an opportunity as well for a little bit more of a role going into 24. So that was really noticeable to me. The Jets at 27% target share to Breece Hall. I mean, it was pretty much all Breece Hall. Is that sustainable with Aaron Rodgers? Because I know a lot of it was driven by Zach Wilson being like a check down machine.
It was Zach, Tim Boyle, whoever else was playing quarterback that couldn't throw out of the backfield, right? Or could only throw into the backfield, I guess is probably a better way of saying it. Yeah, I think that's really the situation at hand, and I don't see that as being sustainable for Breece.
Yeah, that's discouraging because that is a really helpful tool when you're looking at these fantasy backs. So, man, he was so effective. Like looking at his game log, I was looking at it the other day, and I think his last game he had like 31 carries or 38 carries, something absolutely insane. So he's going to be a workhorse, but the target share is definitely going to come down a bit there. So a little concern there, but not too much. Definitely enough to throw him below a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs for me. And I wonder if we should have that's probably about it. Okay. So the Titans at 22.8% at 22.8% of target share to the running back position. That was, I think, partly due to like lack of wide receiver help, but I don't think that situation is getting much better this year. So do we expect Tyjae Spears to have pretty much the Rachaad White season? I mean, that's obviously what a lot of people are talking him up and hyping him up like.
I think that's completely viable, right?
Yes.
Like there's nothing else out there that tells you that won't happen, just because I think that offense will struggle. And the easiest way to move the ball in a struggling offense, which is exactly how Tampa basically was able to capitalize off of what was maybe not the most talented running back rushing game itself, was to really just dump off passes to Rachaad, who happens to excel really well in that type of role. And we've already seen with Tyjae Spears that he does the same exact thing. If anything, he's probably better catching and receiving out of the backfield than he is necessarily running down fields or running up the middle, which will have its own negatives, right? Not having Derrick Henry there puts him in a situation where he's less nuanced and maybe a little bit easier to understand what his game will be when they're using him.
Yeah, similar to like a Zeke and Pollard thing. Like,
yes, yeah. No, I think that's a really good comparison where he was able to be much more efficient in a smaller role. But yeah, I mean, I think that he could still provide that Rachaad White type season because Rachaad White wasn't very effective on the ground still.
Nope.
He was
That's an understatement.
Yeah, he was still super inefficient, but he provided enough. He provided enough in the passing game to get you by, and I think that's what the hope is with Tyjae Spears. Is Rachaad White going to expand his pass catching role even further?
And turn
I don't
into a
think
wide
there's
receiver.
yeah, what and split out wide every
Can.
play. Like I don't think there's any further it can go. I think we've seen. I think I've said this before. I think we've seen pretty much the best we're going to see from Rachaad White. I wouldn't be surprised if he repeats something similar, but I don't think that we're going to see an elevation going forward, personally.
And just to really quickly, and just because I have it
Yeah.
in front of me, I know this is not the highest metric to solve around running back efficiency, but Rachaad White in his first 2 years in the NFL, 3.64 yards per carry and 3.73 yards per carry. Like the dude is the definition of inefficient. So his only use case is really out of the backfield receiving the ball, which he had 64 receptions this past year. They're going to have a major scheme change with a new offensive coordinator. There's a chance that he could become less efficient. And I think that is very much something that you should be concerned with.
YPC for life, baby. I think the only thing that we need to be careful about is we were doing the same thing with that team last year. Scheme change, quarterback change, all the weapons are going to suck. Like if Baker's back, if most of the weapons are back, I think that we can expect a similar type scheme. Though it's fair to point out, Jake, like it's totally fair. It could change. It definitely could change. But I think I just want to be cautious because we literally did that same exact thing last year, and I think it did bite some of us in the ass, just missing out on some of that value. So, yeah, there's definitely a range of outcomes here. Yeah. I'm not excited about paying up for Rachaad White, though. So I haven't really gotten any shares of him in drafts, and I'll probably avoid hoping for I'd rather fade. And I think what you can get Tyjae Spears probably a round or two later. And that feels better trying to take that shot and re-rolling the dice on a similar profile.
All right. You guys want to get into our prospect profiles?
Let's do it.
Oh, yeah. So Billy kindly came up with Keon Coleman and Brenden Rice. And we will try to give our takes on both the players and possibly pick which one we'd rather be drafting. So I'll hop in with what I found on these guys, and then you guys could take over after that. So first of all, Keon Coleman, 4 stars. These both guys are both big wide receivers, which we haven't had for, I don't know, like the last maybe 3 drafts. We've been seeing more 6'1", 6 foot type players, a little bit smaller, but these guys are big body guys. So you have Keon Coleman, 4 stars, 6'4", 215. Played 3 years, breakout age at 22% of market share, receptions was at 19, which I know maybe that's like an old school metric to be looking at nowadays. Maybe I see more Google Sheets analysts kind of fade that, but I still think it matters. I still think it really does matter if you're dominating on your team at the age of 19. I don't really know who he was competing with because I don't watch him play. But at 19 years old, to do that is pretty good. He had an average dominator of 30.2, which is perfectly into a nice little bucket. Contested catch rate, something I've been trying to focus on a little bit more this year, versus a guy like we talked about with Luke McCaffrey, where his contested catch rate was somewhere in like the 60s. Keon Coleman's was at 26.1, which is still roughly, from what I've seen and been able to gather, about 6% higher than you want, but that's not bad at all. His total yards per route run is 1.9, right around that 2-point mark, which is perfectly fine. A 12.2 ADOT, 17.5% average out of the slot, which is probably no surprise given his size. And then his career best target percentage per game is 23.4. Anything over 20%, 23% is pretty good for a wide receiver. 15.2 points per game best, which is pretty low, but it might have to do with the offense. I think you guys could probably elaborate more on that than I can. I would like to have that number closer to like 17 or 18. So whenever I'm looking at these guys, I always try to go to a website that I talk about on here all the time called Grinding the Mocks. where they compile a bunch of mock drafts from a bunch of quote unquote professional analysts and just random people doing mock drafts, and they compile like where they expect this player to be drafted. And they have him at wide receiver 5 in class and his expected draft position at wide receiver 30, which means to me this guy's going to be a very high day 2 draft pick, possibly really, really late in the first. Dude's going to get drafted high, and all the metrics that I see, I like. And then we have Brenden Rice. Brenden Rice is another guy that's kind of hard to actually profile on my part. There's not a ton out there. Like, you would think with a guy who his dad is Jerry Rice, so you think there'd be a little more just articles and film and history behind what he's done. And it's a little harder to find than I was hoping for. Same with like Luke McCaffrey. You'd think there'd be more out there than there was, but Brenden Rice, 3 stars, 6'3", 205, played 4 years. I think he transferred a couple of different times, but he also had the 19-year-old breakout age, a 20.3 average dominated, which is low. His contested catch rate, though, is only 20.7. So it makes me think that he's actually probably pretty good at getting separation. Billy could probably talk to us about that. His total yards per route run is 2.1, putting him over the 2.0 box that I like. 13.3 average depth of target. Only 11.2 average out of the slot. Again, not surprising given how big he is. And his career best targets per game, 16.4%, which is pretty low. 16.3 points per game, best. It's not bad, really close to that 17 points per game mark that I like. I couldn't find anything about him where he's expected to get drafted, and it's something that I'd like to look at if I was to be tasked with ranking this guy. Where I think he'd go, I would like to have some sort of clue as to where he's going, but I couldn't really find too many mocks where he's going. I saw somebody say he's the top 100 prospect, saying, okay, so top 100 prospect, he's going to get taken somewhere within the first 3 rounds. I don't even think that's true. Even with his dad's name, my guess is this guy is maybe a day 3 type draft pick would be my guess. I could be wrong, but that's just kind of what I'm getting. If I had to choose between these two, I'm taking Keon Coleman over Brenden Rice all day.
Yeah, it's super interesting because from a data perspective, I think that's definitely the story that it tells. From a film perspective, I think it brings these guys a little bit closer. So, and I think our rankings kind of capture that, to be honest. So, and I have that in the graphic here. So for Brenden Rice, we have him at wide receiver 10, around 20th overall, and then Coleman, wide receiver 9, 15th overall. So very close in our rankings, and you can see how KTC and the ADP is a little further off for sure, right? So I'll go in the order you did, just talking about Coleman real quick. He definitely flashes route technique, but doesn't often create separation due to inconsistent nuance and technique. He doesn't really offer a super diverse release package, and his route technique during routes is not super sharp, and he doesn't really try to manipulate defenders too much. So I just think all in all, he's really kind of winning off of athleticism for the most part. He does have an ability to like recognize zones and coverages. So he's definitely able to, decipher what's in front of him and play off of that. But from an after the catch standpoint, he definitely, you see flashes for sure, but he lacks some bend, some burst, lateral agility after the catch. He's big, physical, and fast. So he's going to beat guys out sometimes from that respect, but not ultra fast. He is a calculated evader. So again, I think he's able to recognize and anticipate what's in front of him at times. So he's definitely a smart player, smooth, but he doesn't really possess an extra gear. And I think he just lacks some consistency after the catch in terms of evasiveness.
That's Keon Coleman, right?
That's Keon Coleman. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Rice, I guess I can jump into real quick here. Big, lanky guy, obviously, physically imposing. I think he offers really good burst and speed for his size. He exhibits a really well-refined route tree and technique with a diverse release package. So I think he offers something that Coleman doesn't in that respect. He has really good hands, but you do see some body catches at times. but where like Coleman isn't, throwing head peeks and shoulder fakes during his routes, that's the stuff that Rice is implementing during his routes. I would describe him as like a master manipulator. He's deceiving defenders and creating separation with route technique and manipulation movements. That said, he lacks something that Coleman does have. He's a little bit more rigid, I'd say, after the catch. He does, for his size, exhibit some good bend at the knee, but in terms of evading defenders after the catch, he offers a lot less in that respect, and doesn't exhibit elite speed, but he's dynamic in short areas. So I think that really shows up in his release and after the catch, like in short areas, making guys miss, but he's not going to break away from defenders and, gain 40 yards. Like that's not the guy he is, in my opinion, but he's much more of a route technician. And I think he's a guy who could definitely carve out a role at the next level. The draft capital is going to be huge. We're probably going to be having Coleman over him no matter what because of the DC. But I don't know. How do you feel about these guys, Jake?
Yeah, so I'll start off with Keon Coleman as well. I just wanted to highlight the games that I watched pretty in-depthly. It was the 2023 Clemson game and the 2022 bowl game against LSU. So that LSU game was one of his breakout games, basically. I think he caught 160-something yards, 3 touchdowns in a not so important bowl game. I think it was like the Camping World bowl game or some shit like that. But,
hey, no shade on Camping World. Come on.
Yeah,
no
shame. No shame. The one big thing that I think stood out to me was his lack of extension with his hands. He doesn't go and grab the ball more often than not. And I do find that he actually body catches more often than not. So of the 7 receptions that he made, I think it was 5 of the 7 were all in body, where he could have easily grabbed them earlier. He was 19 at the time, if I remember correctly. So that is important to understand because it does happen a little bit less in the Clemson game a year later. But his lack of separation was really, really prominent. I know you provided a contested catch statistic that basically doesn't show that, but at least in the LSU game, 2 of the 3 touchdown catches were just defenders draped on him, and he's catching a touchdown, which to me doesn't necessarily translate incredibly well to the NFL for a couple of reasons. I think cornerback play is one of those where there's a huge gap between NCAA play versus NFL play. Most players in those situations are going to contest that catch at a significantly higher rate than they are in NCAA. So something that I just wanted to bring up. And then additionally, in the more recent Clemson game, one of the big things that I actually thought was relatively bad was pre-catch awareness. So not knowing when defenders were on him. There were 2 or 3 times where he would catch the ball, turn up into a defender, not knowing where he was actually receiving the ball, which is actually one of what I thought was the bigger gap between him and Rice. So jumping off into Brenden Rice, his ability to provide that separation for himself kind of could mask that weakness for me. It was a lot harder for me to see that issue. And the 2 games that I saw him play was 2023 Colorado and 2023 Oregon. Now, in the Colorado game, it's very important to highlight the caliber of play. So it's much lower than versus Oregon. His elusiveness after the catch was something that I noticed, that he was able to either 1 or 2 step right after reception, but then basically after that, as Billy was alluding to, no pun intended, he basically has no move. So it's like his lack of ability to have that second or third step to then actually drive into an open space was really, really prevalent for me. And then he was really imposing. Like, he shows a lot of strength versus shittier cornerbacks at the end of the day. And he wasn't able to do that against Oregon. One of the things that I do really like about him is that in the actual route tree, and while he's running a route, he reminds me a lot of like Isaiah Pacheco. He runs really hard. And when you see a wide receiver run hard, you tend to see those cuts a lot more pervasively because they're more prominent to you as a viewer. But not even just that. I think that he sells them really well, which is why he is creating as much separation as he is.
That's I just want to say, sorry, it's so funny you said that. I don't know if you read my notes.
I didn't. No.
My like final notes on him. the box for that, I said the second line is heavy use of arm drive in running motion.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're talking about. Instead of like, it's not so much the leg drive like Isaiah Pacheco, but he's like really driving those arms and trying to sell either like the comeback or the downfield route, whatever it is. But that is something I noticed as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And then last thing I did want to highlight about Brenden Rice that I thought was really prominent, especially in the Oregon game, because he didn't get targeted that much. His off the ball run blocking is actually surprisingly very, very strong. I don't know if that's something that he's worked on throughout his career, but I definitely think that at bare minimum, that drives up his value in the NFL. And I don't think a lot of people look at that. When I compare him to Keon Coleman, it's night and day difference. Like Keon is a big frame that does not want to get dirty. Brenden Rice, the exact opposite. So when I'm thinking about, use cases of players having perceived longer careers, I can see a Brenden Rice being in the NFL longer than Keon Coleman if Keon doesn't hit the heights that people are expecting him to. And I think that, for me at least, has perceived negative value moving forward. So just something I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, I think these guys are going to be a lot closer together at the end of the day, I'm telling you, than we are expecting. I don't mean during the draft. I mean end of the day, these guys' draft capital isn't always, the end all be all. So I do think that he offers a lot as a wide receiver, as a well-rounded wide receiver. So I think this isn't a guy who's just Jerry Rice's son, is kind of my opinion. Like, he's a guy who's Jerry Rice's son, but also flashes some pretty sharp ability in almost all aspects of the wide receiver position, where Keon Coleman, I think he lacks a lot of the nuance that you want to see out of a wide receiver at the next level. And if he's going to win off of athleticism, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. And I think Keon Coleman shows flashes. I did say that. I do see it. It's there. So he can get better. I don't think he's N'Keal Harry. I think he's somewhere in between N'Keal Harry and whatever the next level up is. But yeah, I'm excited about Brenden Rice because I don't think we're going to have to pay much for him. Yep. And I think that he could return on the investment at a pretty high level, at least compared to what I think we're expecting, or most people are expecting.
Yeah, in mocks, we're seeing him drop all the way into sometimes even the early fourth. If it wasn't for Billy being in the majority of the rookie mocks that I do, going in the late third almost every single time, I think he would easily drop into the early fourth. And depending on draft capital, it could potentially stay just there. And I don't think that that's a bad shout for an early to mid fourth round pick. So,
love it.
Good job, man. That was really good.
I can see your eyes just beaming, bro. This is the best. This is like his favorite time of the week. This is lighting up his day.
I love this. And then having both you guys just like talking smart about saying like it's, what's great is the things that like kind of stand out to me when I scroll through the sheets, because I'm lazy and it's easier to look at numbers. But when they actually correlate with what you guys see on film, like usually that's a pretty smash in my opinion. So yeah, it makes me happy.
Love it.
Sure does.
Love it. All right. Jake, did you have I know you had one thing you wanted to discuss about the rankings. You want to throw it out there to the world?
Sure. I think
it's worth
that's why I'm wearing my Packers colors for Matt.
Yeah.
I was going through the rankings, as we always do. It's a weekly, sometimes bi-weekly basis, depending on what part of the season. Right now, I'm looking at it bi-weekly. And I kind of just came to terms because I started creating a Delta column for myself to know how far off of Billy and Uriah I am. So I saw a huge gap of over 50 rank spots at the time. It looks like 48 right now of Aaron Rodgers. And when I'm looking at that rank differentiation, I'm talking specifically about rebuilder ranking. So when I think of rebuilder, I'm thinking about a team that is trying to compete either next year or the year after, trying to, either tear down, find themselves in a better situation, realistically not starting a 40-year-old, 41-year-old veteran quarterback. And so, we need to put that into perspective, though, because the players around that ranking matter. So one of the things that I did want to shout out is that for myself, I have Aaron Rodgers at 153. Billy has him at 105. Uriah has him at 121. And that actually doesn't include rookies because I don't think Uriah has included them yet, which would mean that Aaron Rodgers will probably move down at least probably 10 to 12 spots, just something to keep in mind. Additionally, I did want to bring up that in the DU4 startup, he did land at the 106, meaning the 106th pick overall. And caveat, that team is competing. So he is very much QB2 in a team that is trying to probably compete in year one. So just wanted to shout that out. And I really just want to provide the floor to the group to kind of talk a little bit more about how we're valuing him in a rebuilder ranking situation.
Well, probably needs to move down in the contender rankings a little bit now that I'm looking at it, but that's probably
7
more
overall is a
appropriate.
little ridiculous, right?
Yeah. What is it? He's like at 81 in my contender rankings. So that's pretty high. But I guess I mean, obviously, I value quarterbacks a good deal in Superflex, but also if you get 2 to 3 years of good Aaron Rodgers on the Jets, I'm thinking that's pretty damn valuable. And I mean, I'm looking at the ranking. When you said this to me, I kept the ranking where it was for the conversation. But I'm trying to kind of understand like how far I'm willing to move him down, because I have guys in between him and your ranking, like Braylon Allen and, you know, some of these rookies where I'm just like, am I really going to roll the dice on one of those guys, or am I going to take one of the better quarterbacks of our generation who obviously is coming off of a devastating injury, but he, you know, does witchcraft in his off days to heal himself. So, you know, I'm wondering if he may be able to come back for a more extended period of time than maybe most are expecting, or, you know, that's kind of, for me, I'm thinking that he has a little bit more life in him, I think, than you are. I think that's part of it for sure.
I don't think he's going to die.
But I just think the highs for him could be pretty solid in New York with the roster they have there, and another year to build around, another draft class to add to that team. I'm thinking maybe, you know, that if they can protect him, he can stay up, and if he doesn't suffer this injury again, then we might have something here. So I do agree that it's a little high. I have him too high for sure. You know, guys like right around him, I guess, you know, Barkley, Mayer, Freiermuth, Spears, and then we're getting into some rookies, and then, you know, some more tight ends, and then the old running backs. So yeah, it's a dicey area, and he's a risky asset for sure at this point, but I think I'm just valuing the quarterback position more highly, and I'm expecting him to last a little bit longer than you are.
So quick question before I give you right of the floor. A mid to early second or Aaron Rodgers? And you're a rebuilder. Like, you have Aaron Rodgers on your team, and you are not competing this year, so you want your possible points to be as low as possible. What's your situation?
I don't worry about the potential points as much as most people. I find that if I can get myself close to the top, then I can manage my way to where I need to be at the top if I really want like a higher pick. So I'm not worried about that as much. And I know a lot of people do get concerned about that. In terms of having the points on my team, I think I would be greedy and probably try to get more.
You think you can get more than a
when he's
early,
he hasn't touched
even
the field
next
yet.
year when he's 41.
I think
you'll be able to
get more.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would love to see that experiment happen. I'm not saying that.
I mean, it's so no. I know it's funny because this was years ago, obviously, when Rodgers was probably like 38 or something like that. But I had somebody tell me this exact thing in a trade negotiation where I was like, he was like, "You're not going to get more than this mid-second for Aaron Rodgers or whatever," and I was like, "Okay," and I just waited. And it's not the same. Obviously, he's much older now, but there's generally a value spike, especially with assets like this who have taken a hit because of an injury and their full value hasn't rebounded.
Yeah.
So for me, like, I think I would take that risk with a quarterback in Superflex, given that, again, I think that for me, because I think so highly of his situation, I obviously think that he can produce at a higher rate that is worth a roster spot in general, let alone, like, I don't think I'm willing to sell him for a mid-second round pick, a early second round pick. Like, guaranteed like this dude's got like this other guy's team second who sucks, like I'll probably go ahead and just like cut my losses there. But a mid-second this year, like knowing the class, it's a little dicey for me. That's just how I feel about it.
Fair enough. One last comment, and then, sorry, you're right. Floor is yours. I do want to say that Matt Stafford, very much in a similar situation this past offseason. You were able to get him super cheap, and I was actually thankful to be able to sell him for a first this year. And, looking back on that, I might have actually been able to get a little bit more depending on what time of the year I was able to sell him. So it's something to definitely be mindful of, and I definitely will be moving Aaron Rodgers slightly up, but I don't think as high as you have it. Uriah, floor is yours.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I think that mostly the reason why Aaron Rodgers is higher in my rankings probably than yours, if we did the count, which I haven't, but we can, I probably have more quarterbacks ranked higher than you do in general, which is probably what's pushing Aaron Rodgers up for me. But looking at the quarterbacks I have behind him, I'm not really mad about it at all. Just doing a quick, I got Daniel Jones. I have Gardner Minshew, Mac Jones, Aiden O'Connell, Sam Howell, Josh Dobbs, Trey Lance, Zach Wilson. Like, I can't put any of those guys above Aaron Rodgers. Maybe some of the skill position players, maybe I would have over him. But nothing here really crazy. Maybe like an Elijah Moore, I could have higher than him. Maybe a Cortland Sutton, I can move up. But yeah, I think it just has to do with me possibly having just more quarterbacks in like the top 100 than you do. I think that he is one of those players that you could absolutely sell for a high second, low first, depending on how things shake up in New York. I think he has 2-3 years left. So
that's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really valuable conversation to have, like just in general for like this is like a mini rankings process, kind of like, or ranking symposium like segment in a way where it's because I think it's, first of all, you're kind of seeing how like all of us approach the rankings in terms of like our own perspective, but also how we do it as a group, like talking to each other about, hey, this guy's a little too high, this guy's and reasonably adjusting, not being like, yeah, you said that I'm gonna raise him up. It's we both listen to each side and realized, okay, there's definitely something on that side, so I need to close the gap is what we're doing, right? And that's going to change the ranking slightly, but it's definitely not going to move it in either direction too much. It'll probably make it a more appropriate ranking at the end of the day. So really valuable conversation. I like how we kind of just organically got there. So it's a fun one.
All right, so let's do a quick segment on Underdog Under the Hood, which is always fun when Jake's here. Just kind of talk about what's keeping us up at night. So how much do we weight film? I like saying that. I don't know. It just sounds
I love it. No, keep saying it. It's perfect.
When you're walking out the door, you shut the door, you lock your house door in the morning to go to work, and you're walking to your car. Like, what are you thinking about? Like, I don't know.
That's the segment.
This.
Literally this.
How much do we weight film or analytics in our evaluation, say for rookie grading and ranking? I would like to think that as Billy and I have done this for a few years and how we've kind of worked it out, it's just more fun to really make my decisions and weight where I value this process based on the work that we've done, right? I trust Billy 100% with his evaluations, and hopefully he has some similar trust in me. And for me, it's, really it is like 50-50. I think the analytics really, really matter.
I don't trust this guy at all. Don't listen to him.
I don't know what the hell I'm talking about half the time, but I try. I know that. And Billy, I know, is getting better year after year. Just definitely more comfortable in what he's doing. If we could do it perfectly, if we were maybe more statistically inclined and maybe we're a little bit better at what I was doing on my end, it could be a perfect 50-50 split. I could go confidently drafting them in my rookie drafts without knowing anybody else's rankings at all on Twitter from anybody else that you guys listen to, Daniel Jeremiah, Brugler, any of the guys' player profile. It doesn't really matter. If it was just what me and Billy did, I'd feel comfortable with what we have.
Oh, I didn't realize this was Underdog Under the Hood. Let's endorse our own content, but cool.
Just saying.
I think what we do is perfect, and it's evenly split.
Yes.
No, I love that. I mean, I honestly, all
Just
that's
saying.
true. No, it is. I mean, I think not all of it's true, but I think I agree with what you're saying. Like we try to be very thorough here, and we're getting better every year. I do trust our process, but I like at the end of the day, like I definitely believe in the idea of like trying to create like a formula around, the most optimal statistics that, predicts success at the highest level mixed with like my film grades, right? Because I trust my film grades or whatever film grades that you trust. But I think that it's like a really good place to try to get to. I just don't know if like mathematically there's a real answer to it. So it's really challenging. But like for me at the end of the day, because we haven't figured out that formula, it is kind of do it yourself, like on paper call, right? Because we do try to put a model together of like this of the data side of it, and we do try to put a model together in general. But then I'm always coming back, like no matter how much we weight my film in this model or whatever, is it enough? Like, am I weighting it enough, or am I weighting it too much? And like what? So it's that push and pull, and I'm trying to kind of figure out, like, I guess at the end of the day. And this may be more of a comment for Jake, because maybe Uriah, you're going to always lean back on the data side of things.
Yeah.
Like, are you going and saying like, yeah, these two profiles are pretty close statistically? I'm just going to lean back on what I'm seeing on tape, or like, I guess, how are you approaching that kind of push and pull that I'm talking about?
Yeah, so I think nuance is actually more visible physically than through numbers. And so I find myself actually weighting tape significantly more. I can give you like a percentage basis, but at the end of the day, there's aspects of collegiate football that just don't translate perfectly well statistically, even though we've seen some correlation. There's a reason why there's so many players that just don't hit in the NFL. And a lot of that has to do with typically quality of play. And that's a really like lazy response, and I know that, but the reality is like, someone like a Sky Moore performing at a really high level at a lower level of game doesn't translate necessarily into the NFL. Whereas, players like another terrible example, but a player like George Pickens, who statistically had a relatively productive collegiate career, I was able to see, Billy was able to see as well, some pretty big flaws in his tape that I think made him a significantly less attractive prospect. And, those are the types of things that for me stand out when I want to, go all in on players. And then there's also other nuances that you just can't provide, like landing spot. Like, you can put forth all of the effort you want in the world into your own analytical view and your own tape evaluation, but someone like a Treylon Burks falls right into that grouping of great data backed, great data driven player, great tape driven player, but finds himself in Tennessee and just doesn't thrive. So for me, I'd rather go off of my quote unquote hunch, knowing that I do trust a lot of the analytics, but I'm still going to probably put more of an emphasis on the tape at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think I agree, because for me, that's where more of the edge is in the tape, because unfortunately, most people have access to similar data, and I'm comfortable with the data for sure. I'm comfortable with getting in there and digging in there, while I think plenty of people kind of do that for us, and Uriah does it for me, so I don't have to as much. But I think the edges are where most people don't have the comfortability, which is where I feel I have a good comfort level, is, where I'm confident is in my tape evaluations. So I think that that's where, the edges, like the Puka Nacua, as well. Most people are going to look at me and be like, shut up. Like, you didn't know. Like, no, like that's why I knew, was because I was watching the tape. You know what I mean? Like, there were certainly numbers, peripherals that that pointed to, hey, you should look at this guy. But ultimately, it was the tape that led me to being like, I need to get this guy at the end of most of my drafts. And a lot of people, if they don't have somebody that they can rely on, or they aren't doing that work, I think they're definitely behind the 8 ball compared to their competition. And maybe you have 12 other guys who don't know shit, but like likely you're going to run into, half your league is going to be listening to us or somebody else who does a good job as well. And you're going to be behind the 8 ball. So I think I agree with Jake that that's where you can find more detail and more nuances with the film. While I give a lot of credence to the data side, because I think it does a great job in filtering things and showing us players in groups and giving us kind of giving us like historical comparisons to kind of what we can potentially expect, ranges of outcomes. But you have to understand that a lot of these ranges of outcomes and a lot of these predictive metrics are still really not that effective, right? And you have to take them in combination and create an entire profile. So I think when you're able to add in really solid film process into the data-driven process, you get like an incredibly holistic view on a prospect. And if you can be really if you can be grounded with your analysis, then I think you're going to more times than not gain those edges. So that's kind of how I view it. And it's, for me, I guess what it comes down to is, at the end of the day, if I can lean on film, I'm going to do it. At the end of the day, if like all things being equal, I'm going to go to my film and I'm going to be like, all right, like I believe in this guy for these reasons. So I guess at the end of the day, that's how I view it. And I'm going to give it that extra 1%, 5%, whatever, 10% on the film side for me. So I think I do need to look at that when we're building, because like we do mess around with the model. We're trying to do that because, first of all, it's fun. Second of all, if you can get it to work out, then awesome. That's great too, right? But I think I'm going to mess with like a copy of it that weights maybe the film greater than the other side and see kind of how that works out. Because I'm pretty confident most models aren't weighting film at a very high rate compared to everything else. So I'd wonder what that would look like for us if we kind of did something like that and compared the two maybe this year at, end of next year or whatever, just kind of see where we're at. And that might give us maybe a better idea of how to move forward with that kind of thing. So yeah, just a fun conversation. Interesting one.
All right. Want to talk a couple trades before we get out of here?
Let's do it.
We only got two.
We only got two.
Just
all
literally
right.
A couple.
First one, Nico Collins
Literally.
plus Josh Downs for Cooper Kupp, Tajay Spears, and a third.
Can I just say that this is a smash? Like, this is insane to me. I think this is super lopsided, personally.
Oh,
This was a DU trade, I believe, right?
It wasn't in one of my leagues, I don't think.
I'm pretty confident this was a DU trade. I think this, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't matter. But yeah, Collins, Downs for Kupp, Spears, and a third.
Yeah, I think this is Collins' downside by far.
Easily, like without question for me, it's Collins' downside. And I'm not even the biggest Collins guy, but oh no, I'm sorry. This was my home league with all of our boys from high school. That's what it was. It's sense. A 10 team non-super flex. So that third holds even less value. So 10 team, 1 QB league, Collins plus Downs for Kupp, Spears, and a third. And I know that part of the acquiring Spears side was like, I need running back help. And I'm such an advocate of not purchasing running backs in the offseason, but definitely not giving up what is perceived as top end wide receiver plus for the running back help. And Kupp is definitely a nice little add-on. I'm not just trying to like throw him to the side, but 30-year-old wide receiver, man.
Can we just look at this in terms of DU4 startup value? So we got the 405 plus the 909 plus, for the 704, the 902, and a third. You're not going to tell me that the gap between a 4th round overall startup pick in a 12-team Superflex draft, I understand it's a 10-team 1 QB league. I'm conscientious of that. but the gap is not big enough to then solidify it with a third. If anything, I would say that Downs plus maybe 2/3 or something like that is equivalent to Spears. So if you're out there trying to get Spears, like that's what you should be trying to do. You shouldn't be going out and giving up one of your top wide receiver assets that, you know, the rest of the market is literally orgasming over for a 30-year-old wide receiver and potentially a running back who might not be in the league in 2 years. Like, nuts.
All right.
Sorry. I get so heated over some of these trades because no one does fucking dumb trades like this with me. I don't get it.
Yeah, that's why you're mad you didn't get it. Yeah. That's why. Well, I mean, I think one thing that I want to say about this, and I really think is part of it, is that the general public, and this probably sounds like on my high horse type thing to say, but I think the general public
just now, so
because of because of the Puka stuff and, you know, the late round assets that have hit, they're overvaluing thirds and fourths, and the general public is not likely to even key in on the guy that they want, that they need to be keyed in on to take at that spot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're not prepared most of the time. I'm not saying this person isn't. This person might actually have the wherewithal to do something with it, but I don't think everybody is. And so and my point here is not like don't acquire thirds. My point is to balance the trade or feel that the trade has been balanced at all with that asset is definitely negligent and something that we should maybe not do going forward. But the bigger part of this is for sure moving Nico Collins, who is a top 15 type perceived dynasty asset, for stuff like that. That can't be the process. Like you have to value those more to yourself and to the market.
Like, call me crazy, but that third should be a late first to make this more equal, in my opinion.
Definitely in the second area, somewhere between late first would be a lot, but I get what you're saying. You're trying to capitalize. You're trying to capitalize, and that should be what you do.
It's 10 team. You're right. So I was thinking like 112, 111. So 201, 202 in 10 team. But this feels like robbery.
Well, this one should not make you feel any type of way at all, really.
It's a Giants player.
Bellinger for 2026 fourth.
The palate cleanser. Okay.
Yeah, it's fine, right?
I'll probably take the fourth, but like I can't kill it.
2026 fourth? Like, if it's a guy, like maybe you don't believe in Bellinger, and that's totally fine. I
actually like Bellinger. I was all a Bellinger guy, but
yeah,
it's he lost his eye, right?
Yeah, honestly, that's literally what happened. That's literally what happened after he basically got his eye gouged out in Jacksonville. He is a little trajectory in the rookie year got shat on, and then they traded for Waller, who will be off the team by the end of next season.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right, you've convinced me. I'll take Bellinger.
I think it's a coin flip at the end of the day. I just think like 2026 fourth. If Bellinger is a guy that you even have like even an inkling of hope for, why not? Like, it's basically free at that point. You basically picked him off of waivers for what, like 100 WAB, you know? Like,
yeah. I'm a Bellinger guy, so I can't hate. Like I agree. I think it's a fine move for him.
It's fine.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
All right. Anything else you guys want to talk about before we get out of here?
No. We crushed this one. Thank you all for being here. Great episode.
Oh, did want to say shout out to everyone who's watching our Dynasty Ranking Symposium. We really appreciate it, and please keep giving us feedback. We love it, and it's only going to help us continue to make the segment and series better. So much appreciated.
Yeah, definitely echoing Jake there. New episode coming out Monday. It'll be our final positional evaluation on tight ends. So that's exciting. We'll have 1 or 2 more episodes coming out, and then we'll probably feature some down the road, just ad hoc that are relevant to the same series. So excited to do that. Actually, I do think we have a rookie version planned down the road, which is going to be super fun to do. So keep tuned, stay tuned for that, and sub to the YouTube channel, and you'll see that pop up.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thanks for listening again. Follow us on Twitter, Dynasty Underdog at Uriah Dawkins, at William Beeman DFF, at Jake Abrams. The YouTube channel is coming along really nicely, and my camera keeps cutting out, but that's okay. Join our Discord. It's awesome. It's free and it's pretty active. So hop on in there and join us. Other than that, y'all have a good night.